unerbittlichsten, die es gibt. Die deutsche Arbeit steht an Genauigkeit hinter keiner anderen Arbeit des Auslandes zurück, sondern darf, wie dies unsere großen Rennerfolge beweisen, wirklich als technische Höchstleistung angesehen werden. Wer sich als durchschnittlicher deutscher Kraftwagenbesitzer heute einen ausländischen Wagen kauft, kann nicht darauf hinweisen, dass in dessen bessere Qualität dazu bewogen hätte. Denn hier sind unsere deutschen Automobile zurzeit von ausländischen nicht mehr zu schlagen.
A key aspect of the everyday impact of technology is the way in which it's presented to the population at large. This program concerns how the technology of motorization was presented, indeed sold, between the wars. Technology was equated with achievement and progress, and during the interwar period, few things so symbolized progress as the technological development of the motor car.
Formschön, wirtschaftlich und betriebssicher sind diese neuen deutschen Wagen.
It was the United States which most clearly represented progress.
Automobilausstellungen eröffnet. Man zählt drüben über 20 Millionen Autofahrer.
This German newsreel report from December 1936 is about car exhibitions being held in different cities in the United States, whose citizens owned more than twice as many cars as the rest of the world's population combined. America, with its mass production and mass motorization, had long been held up as a model of progress, to be emulated and caught up with. This is an earlier German film made in 1925. It compares first the ratio of cars to the population and then the daily production of cars in Germany and the United States. The clear message was that Germany had a lot of catching up to do, at a time when in America the number of Model T Fords built in 2 weeks could exceed the number of cars the entire German car industry could produce in a year. The Model T was the first true people's car, the car which changed motoring in the United States from a luxury for the privileged to a feature of the everyday lives of ordinary people. Between 1908 and 1927, 15 million Model T Fords were built, a record which stood until surpassed by the Volkswagen Beetle in the 1970s. Able to be driven on rough country roads, the Model T opened up rural America as never before, and it was cheap. The introduction of assembly line manufacture and economies of scale enabled Ford repeatedly to reduce the price of his Tin Lizzie, and thus bring it within the reach of ever greater numbers of potential buyers. However, by the 1930s, a quite different strategy for marketing American motor cars had been making the running. Not the Ford formula of mass-producing ever more of a single model increasingly cheaply, but the General Motors formula of yearly model changes. This formula, introduced in the 1920s, allowed GM to overtake Ford as the world's largest producer of motor cars, and the GM formula was soon adopted by the rest of America's motor manufacturers as well. Where America had led with mass motorization, the rest of the industrialized world wanted to follow, and not least Germany. There, the Nazi government engaged in a major program to develop its own people's car, the Strength Through Joy car, which became the Volkswagen Beetle. The German attempt to emulate car-owning America was modeled more on the old Ford formula than on the marketing innovations of GM. Indeed, Hitler's vision of mass motorization stemmed directly from Ford, and one of the books the Nazi leader had read in prison in 1924 while writing Mein Kampf was Henry Ford's autobiography. This film shows Hitler visiting the newly built VW factory in Wolfsburg shortly before the war, and taking a ride in the car together with its designer, Dr. Ferdinand Porsche. The Beetle was presented to the public amidst great fanfare at the Berlin Automobile Exhibition in February 1939.
Nach der Eröffnungsfeier besichtigte der Führer die Ausstellung, an der 6 Nationen auf einer Gesamtfläche von 54.000...
Once again, Hitler opened the exhibition, at which, the commentator tells us, 6 countries exhibited, in which more than 100,000 people visited during the first 3 days.
haben sie als Gäste angesagt.
The star attraction was what the commentator introduced as our Volkswagen.
Unser Volkswagen.
In connection with the exhibition, prototypes of the new People's Car were demonstrated to foreign journalists, who were driven along the newly built Autobahn between Berlin and Magdeburg, and who, according to the commentator, were enthusiastic about this wonder of technology.
Autobahn nach Magdeburg und lernten den Volkswagen als ein Wunder der Technik kennen. Man staunte sowohl über die Dauergeschwindigkeit von 100 Stundenkilometern wie über den geringen Benzinverbrauch von nur 6,5 Litern über diese Strecke.
Newsreel viewers were told in detail of the technical specifications of the new car, its fuel consumption, its acceleration, its 4-speed gearbox, its road handling and suspension.
Stoßdämpfung, die durch eine besonders tiefe Schwerpunktslage erreicht wird.
Na, meine Herren, wie hat Ihnen die Fahrt mit dem KDF-Wagen gefallen? Très confortable, à une vitesse qui commercialement est intéressante. Et nous avons pu constater, étant derrière dans la voiture, que cette petite voiture est remarquablement suspendue. À tout point de vue, compliment. C'est une trouvaille et nous espérons vraiment qu'elle aura grand succès.
6 KDF-Wagen kamen zur Besichtigung nach Berlin.
The prototypes also were shown on the streets of Berlin. As the newsreel commentator asserted, everywhere this splendid product of the VW factory was greeted with unreserved admiration.
Das Zeugnis des Volkswagenwerkes vorbehaltlos bewundert.
Germans were encouraged to save in advance for their Volkswagens, paying in 5 marks a week, recorded in little savings booklets. Hitler had stipulated that the car was to cost under 1,000 marks, much less than the cheapest German car then available, but a considerable sum for a wage earner. This booklet belonged to an engineer in Saxony, who by April 1939 already had completed 4 booklets and paid in 1,000 marks. Altogether, he had to save 1,250 marks, 990 for the car, 60 for extras, and 200 for insurance. The new People's Car was intended to bring motorization to the masses. But unfortunately for those who thus invested their savings, the war broke out before series production began, and the cars people had paid for were not delivered. In America, where mass motorization already was well advanced, visions of the future also came on wheels. At the 1939-1940 New York World's Fair, General Motors offered to the public an elaborate model of the future as it was envisaged on the eve of the Second World War.
To help us get a glimpse into the future of this unfinished world of ours, there has been created for the New York World's Fair a thought-provoking exhibit of the developments ahead of us, the greater and better world of tomorrow that we in America are building today. A vivid tribute to the American scheme of living, whereby individual effort, the freedom to think, and the will to do have given birth to a generation of men who always want new fields for greater accomplishment, and will always find new things for all others to enjoy. Come, let's travel into the future. What will we see? And now we have arrived in this wonder world of 1960. The World's Fair exhibit, modeled with such artistry and skill that we must continually remind ourselves the world we are now seeing is a vision, an artistic conception which may undergo many changes as it develops into the great realities of tomorrow. This superb one-direction highway, with its 7 lanes accommodating traffic at designated speeds of 50, 75, and 100 miles an hour, is engineered for easy grades and for speed with safety. Cars from the farm roads and feeder lanes join the motorway traffic at the same speed as cars traveling in the lane they enter. And now we see an enlarged section of 1960s express motorway. Along the ledge of this beautiful precipice, traffic moves at unreduced rates of speed. Safe distance between cars is maintained by automatic radio control. Curved sides assist the driver in keeping his car within the proper lane under all circumstances. The keynote of this motorway, safety. Safety with increased speed. This 1960 drama of transportation progress is but a symbol of future progress in every activity made possible by constant striving toward new and better horizons.
To a limited extent, this vision already was coming true. By the late 1930s, a number of major road projects had been undertaken in the United States, such as the parkways around New York City. The Pennsylvania Turnpike opened to traffic in 1940, enabling motorists to cross the Appalachian mountain range without stopping for a red light. The first freeway in Los Angeles, the Arroyo Seco Parkway, later renamed the Pasadena Freeway, also opened in 1940. It soon was filled with traffic in a city where already in the mid-1920s, every other resident owned a car. In Germany, however, motorways preceded mass motorization. There, the 1930s witnessed massive new road building projects. Soon after the Nazis came to power, thousands of men were put to work on the construction of the first sections of the Autobahn network, which initially had been proposed during the 1920s. The actual building of the Autobahns began with great fanfare on the 23rd of September 1933 on the section between Frankfurt-Main and Darmstadt. Maximum propaganda value was extracted, as the new Reich Chancellor was filmed at the ceremony, and then digging the first spadeful of dirt.
Und ehe 6 Jahre vergangen, soll ein Riesenberg zeugen von unserem Willen, unserem Fleiß, unserer Fähigkeit und unserer Entschlusskraft. Deutsche Arbeiter, an das Werk!
Even today, an important element of our image of Hitler is of the man who built the Autobahns, perhaps continuing testimony to the success of the Nazi propaganda ministry. During the early years, the building of the Autobahns was used to provide jobs for some of the millions of Germans thrown out of work during the Depression. The use of mechanized equipment was kept to a minimum in order to provide work for as many as possible of Germany's millions of unemployed. In May 1935, the first ceremonial opening of an Autobahn took place to the south of Frankfurt. Hitler was there to preside over the ribbon-breaking ceremony, followed by a gigantic motorcade. And so began a succession of triumphant openings of sections of Autobahn by Nazi celebrities during the 1930s, in which the successful harnessing of technology was praised and seemed to promise a marvelous motorized future for the German people, the new regime was bringing its citizens the roads of the future.
Der Führer fuhr wieder als erster die neue Teilstrecke der Reichsautobahn München-Holzkirchen ab.
In July 1935, Hitler opened the section of Autobahn between Munich and Holzkirchen to the southeast of the Bavarian capital. In May 1936, the section of what was described on the newsreel as the roads of Adolf Hitler between Braunschweig and Lehrte in central Germany was opened.
Von Braunschweig nach Lehrte.
In August 1936, another 5 sections of Autobahn were opened, including the section to the west of Berlin, linking the Reich capital with Magdeburg. This section was opened by the region's Nazi Party Gauleiter in the presence of the leader of the German Labour Front, Robert Ley.
An 10 verschiedenen Stellen wurden gleichzeitig
1 month later, Hitler, joined by Fritz Todt, the head of the construction organization which built the Autobahns, opened the link between Breslau and Treibau in Silesia, marking 1,000 kilometers of completed motorway. But Hitler's vision of a motorized future ran into problems. The war intervened, and 10 years after this ceremony took place, there would be no Volkswagens buzzing along this road as Hitler had prophesied. After the war, this part of Germany became Polish.
Des deutschen Volkes am 23. September 1933 den Bau der
The first German dual carriageway, the Avus in the Grunewald in Berlin, and the first plans for an Autobahn network dated from the 1920s. The Nazis translated the plans into an impressive nationwide building program, beginning with the Frankfurt-Darmstadt section. 7,000 kilometers of motorway were planned altogether, and by 1936, there were 2,000 kilometers of Autobahn either under construction or already completed.
Schon sind von den im ersten Ausbau geplanten 7.000 Kilometer Autobahnen.
According to the commentary of this film, the gigantic Autobahn building program was designed for a traffic which, with a substantial increase in motor vehicles, with the increase in their speed and the raising of their carrying capacities, has developed extraordinarily quickly and will develop further.
Weiterentwickeln wird.
But the propaganda appeal of the Autobahn was not limited just to the size of the project or its role in putting Germans back to work. It also was praised for bringing joy to people's everyday lives through technological progress, as the commentator of this 1939 film, entitled Roads Bring Happiness, pointed out.
Die Reichsautobahnen sind in ihrer Anlage.
The Reich Autobahns are the most modern, the safest and most beautiful thoroughfares in the world. On these roads, it is possible for the motorist to cover great distances in the shortest time, whereby neither driver nor vehicle is strained.
In einem gewaltigen Netz.
The Autobahns cover all of Germany in a vast network. They blend harmoniously into the landscape. The task of linking technology and nature has been happily achieved, and the appeal of the German countryside is impressively conveyed to the auto traveller.
Eindrucksvoll vermittelt. Park- und Rastplätze.
Parking and rest areas make it possible to linger in especially scenic places.
Cars and roads, the successful harnessing of technology for people's everyday lives, symbolized progress. Today, we may have become rather cynical about the benefits of traffic-choked motorways and the degree to which they harmoniously link nature and technology. But during the late 1930s, these were the roads of the future.
Und so angelegt hat, dass noch spätere Generationen über ein Straßennetz verfügen.
Whereas in the United States, mass motorization had predated the building of the motorways. Indeed, the presence of millions of cars and car owners had helped create the pressure to develop and extend the road network. The development was quite different in Germany. In Germany, where the Autobahn building project predated widespread car ownership, the impetus was a political one, coupled with a widespread desire to catch up with and even surpass that wonderland of technology and high living standards, America. In both countries, and elsewhere as well, technology was sold to the population as a key to a marvelous future.